It was happening again. The exact same betrayal that had shattered my first life, delivered this time through the cold blue light of my phone screen. I stared at Maya's text. Sorry, babe, emergency came up, can't make our appointment. While my BMW idled in the searing afternoon sun, parked directly in front of Luxe Hair Studio. This was the same salon, the same flimsy excuse, the same friend. The familiar hollow sting of abandonment crashed over me, a phantom pain from a life I'd already lived and lost. 3 years ago, this precise cancellation had been the first domino to fall, leading to my ultimate humiliation at the company gala. I had shown up with frizzy, untamed hair from a cheap box dye, only to watch Maya glow with professional radiance beside my then-fiancé, Derek. But this time, there were no tears. This time, a slow, deliberate smile spread across my face. Rebirth had its perks, the greatest of which was a flawless memory of every single treachery. I remembered how this emergency was actually a cozy, celebratory lunch with Derek, laying the groundwork for my public disposal. My fingers moved with newfound confidence across the keyboard. No worries, I typed, the words feeling like polished stones in my mouth. Have fun with Derek at lunch. I hit send, my heart giving a triumphant thrum as I watched the result. The three little dots of Maya's reply appeared, then vanished. Appeared, then vanished again. She had no idea that I knew, and her frantic hesitation was the sweetest appetizer I could have imagined. The moment I stepped inside the salon, the familiar scent of expensive shampoo and jasmine candles threatened to pull me back into the past. It was the fragrance of my former failure, transporting me to that horrible night when Derek, his voice laced with disgust, had publicly dumped me for being unpresentable in front of his colleagues. I braced for the wave of phantom shame, but it never came. Instead, a beaming stylist I recognized as Sophia hurried toward me, her clipboard held aloft like a victor's banner. Miss Chen, we were so excited to see you. Your appointment is still on. In fact, we've been instructed to give you the full VIP treatment today. My brow furrowed in confusion as she guided me not to the usual row of chairs, but toward an opulent door I'd never seen open before. It led to an exclusive private suite, all plush velvet and gleaming chrome. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of disbelief and dawning realization. Someone had taken my basic trim and transformed it into a $2,000 package. Color correction, deep conditioning, seamless extensions, and a full session with a professional makeup artist. This wasn't just an upgrade, it was an orchestrated event. As I sank into the supple leather of the styling chair, my bewildered gaze fell upon a crystal champagne flute placed on the vanity beside me. A heavy, cream-colored card with elegant, masculine handwriting was propped against its base. It read, "For tonight's real show, AM." As Sophia began to work her magic, her fingers expertly sectioning my hair, I closed my eyes and let the memories play. The warmth of the conditioning mask tingling against my scalp was a soothing counterpoint to the bitterness of my recollections. I saw it all with perfect clarity now. Maya orchestrating that first betrayal, convincing me to skip the salon with a story about a sick aunt so she could be the only one looking stunning at the gala. She had wanted no competition. I mentally cataloged every detail of their joint conspiracy. The way Derek's eyes had lingered on the shimmering fabric of Maya's dress all night, the way she had accidentally spilled red wine on my cheap, off-the-rack outfit, her feigned apology ringing false even then. I had been a pawn in their game, a stepping stone for her social climbing and his heartless ambition. "Whoever arranged this really wants you to shine," Sophia murmured, her voice gentle, as she combed through a new, honey-blonde extension, holding it against my dark roots. "Your hair is going to be absolutely breathtaking." A feeling of profound, intoxicating power began to bloom in my chest, pushing out the last vestiges of the old Emma. I was no longer a victim of circumstance. I was an active participant in a play where I finally knew all the lines. I opened my eyes, my new reflection starting to take shape in the mirror, and glanced through the tinted glass of my private suite toward the street. Just then, a familiar white Mercedes pulled into a parking spot. Maya was here. She was checking up on me, expecting to find a broken toy she could pretend to comfort. Maya burst through the salon's glass doors, a whirlwind of manufactured concern and barely concealed impatience. Her perfectly manicured nails drummed a frantic rhythm against her Hermes Birkin bag as her sharp eyes scanned the bustling main floor. A flicker of confusion crossed her Botoxed features when she didn't immediately spot me hunched in a corner. I watched from behind the one-way glass of my VIP suite, a queen observing from her fortress as she stalked toward the reception desk. Her voice, pitched just high enough to carry, rose to that familiar, saccharine tone she used when things weren't going according to her manipulative plans. Other clients, sensing the subtle drama, began to turn and stare. "Hi," she began, leaning conspiratorially toward the receptionist. "I need to speak with my friend. She's here for basic trim, Emma-chen. Brown hair, probably crying about something." The words were a public performance of pity, designed to cement her image as the caring friend while painting me as a pathetic mess. It was the same tactic she had used for years. But this time, the world had changed. The receptionist's professional smile never wavered, her posture a column of polite indifference. With a voice as smooth and cool as marble, she delivered the line that shattered Maya's reality. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said, her eyes flicking briefly toward a private client list. "We don't have anyone matching that description in our VIP suite today." Back in my penthouse apartment, another impossibly generous gift from my mysterious benefactor, AM, the sheer scale of my new reality was breathtaking. The chaos I'd left Maya in at the salon felt like a distant prologue. Hanging on the back of my bedroom door was a garment bag, its dark canvas hiding something magnificent. My fingers trembled slightly as I unzipped it. A river of midnight blue silk cascaded out, pooling on the plush white carpet. It was a Valentino gown, a masterpiece of haute couture that whispered of starlit nights and whispered secrets. It probably cost more than Maya's entire monthly salary. I held it against myself, the silk cool against my skin, and remembered the scratchy, ill-fitting clearance rack dress I'd worn to this very same company gala in my previous life. Maya, of course, had somehow afforded a designer piece even then, a fact she never let me forget. My reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows showed a woman I barely recognized. The honey blonde highlights from the salon caught the golden hour light, and my skin glowed from a diamond facial I never even knew existed. I was no longer Emma Chen, the mousy accountant. I was a stranger forged in fire and financed by a ghost. Tucked into the folds of the gown was another of AM's signature cream-colored cards. "Every queen deserves her crown. Tonight, you reclaim your throne, AM." As if on cue, my phone buzzed on the marble countertop. I glanced at the screen, a chill of victorious irony running down my spine. It was a text from Derek. "Can't wait to see you tonight, beautiful." The grand ballroom's crystal chandeliers were like frozen supernovas, casting rainbow fractals across the polished marble floors. I paused at the top of the grand staircase, taking in the scene below, a sea of tuxedos and gowns, the same crowd that had pitied and dismissed me just 3 years prior. Then, I began my descent. One step, then another, my Louboutin heels clicking a confident, dangerous rhythm. Every eye turned. Conversations faltered and died. The collective gaze of the room followed me like flowers tracking the sun. I found Maya and Derek instantly. Her champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble with a sound that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Derek's jaw went slack, his face a mask of utter disbelief. The exact same expression he'd worn when he'd told me I was too embarrassing for his world. The whispers started immediately, a wave of speculation rippling through the crowd. "Who is she? Is that really Emma Chen from accounting? That dress must cost more than my car." I savored every word. I glided past my former tormentors, the intoxicating scent of their raw panic, a far more expensive perfume than whatever Maya was wearing. I headed directly for the VIP section, my posture perfect, my expression serene. Their shock was the validation I had craved for an eternity. As I neared the cordoned-off area, the company CEO, Richard Morrison, a man who had never once acknowledged my existence, broke away from a circle of board members and approached me directly, his face lit with a smile I'd never seen directed at me before. Emma, you look absolutely radiant. Richard's voice was warm, tinged with a deference that was entirely new. He unclipped the velvet rope himself and guided me toward the head table, the place reserved for the company's most powerful players. We moved past Maya and Derek, who remained frozen near the appetizer station, like statues memorializing their own catastrophic mistake. The caviar I was served tasted like victory, each salty pearl a burst of vindication on my tongue. Board members who had previously treated me like invisible furniture now leaned in to offer congratulations on, well, they weren't sure what, but they knew they needed to be on my side. Finally, Maya approached, her composure painstakingly reassembled, her smile as brittle as cracked porcelain. "Emma, darling," she cooed, her eyes scanning my dress with undisguised envy. "You look different. Where did you get that dress?" I met her toxic gaze with a serene confidence that felt like armor. My voice was honey-sweet, laced with poison only she could detect. "Oh, this old thing?" I replied, taking a delicate sip of my champagne. "A friend thought I deserved something special for once." Her face tightened, the carefully constructed mask beginning to slip. Before she could formulate another question, the lights in the grand ballroom dimmed. A single spotlight hit the stage, and Richard Morrison stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice amplified throughout the now silent room. "If I could have your attention for a moment, we have a very special surprise tonight." "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard's voice boomed, holding the attention of every person in the room. For some time now, our company's growth has been quietly bolstered by a significant major investor who preferred to remain anonymous. Tonight, I'm pleased to announce that this mysterious benefactor has decided to reveal herself. My heart thundered against the silk of my gown, a frantic, wild drumbeat that only I could hear. Every face in the ballroom, every champagne glass suspended mid-sip, turned slowly toward the head table. The room held its collective breath, the air thick with anticipation. Richard smiled, his gaze landing directly, unequivocally, on me. "Emma Chen," he announced, his voice filled with theatrical pride, "who many of you know from our accounting department, is actually the daughter of tech mogul Alexander Morrison and our new majority shareholder." The gasp was audible, a wave of sound that rippled through the ballroom, followed by the tinkling of crystal stemware as trembling hands lost their grip. The name Morrison was legendary, a titan of industry whose influence was felt across continents. The revelation landed like a physical blow. But nowhere did it hit harder than the spot where Maya and Derek stood. Derek looked like he might vomit directly into his dinner plate, his face cycling through a kaleidoscope of greed, regret, and pure terror. Maya's face had gone corpse pale, the blood draining from it so completely she looked like a wax figure. The full weight of her 3 years of condescension, of her petty cruelties and calculated betrayals, crashed down upon her in that single, devastating moment. She stumbled backward, her heel catching on the carpet, knocking into a server and sending a tray of canapes scattering across the floor. The Monday morning after the gala felt like the dawn of a new era. The office, once a landscape of muted gray cubicles where I was invisible, now buzzed with a nervous energy centered entirely on me. I was pouring myself a cappuccino when Maya cornered me by the coffee machine. The dark circles under her eyes were poorly concealed by a thick layer of foundation, but her usual predatory smile was plastered firmly in place. "Emma, sweetie," she purred, her voice a weaponized caress as she stirred her latte with aggressive precision. "About Friday night, I had no idea about your situation. It's all just so shocking." She positioned herself strategically between me and the elevator, a lioness attempting to herd her prey, completely unaware the prey was now the hunter. The rich aroma of espresso couldn't mask the desperate, cloying scent of fear rolling off her in waves. "We should really talk about the Henderson project," she continued, her tone shifting to business, as if she could reclaim her dominance through sheer force of will. "There are some key strategies I've developed that you need to be brought up to speed on." I took a slow, deliberate sip of my cappuccino, the warm foam a delightful contrast to the ice in my veins. I let the silence stretch, watching the tiny cracks begin to form around the edges of her forced smile. I let her stand there, exposed and floundering in the quiet authority of my gaze. Finally, I lowered my cup. "Actually, Maya," I said, my voice even and calm, "I've been meaning to discuss something important with you about that project, too." In the pristine, glass-walled conference room, Maya spread her presentation materials across the polished mahogany table like a general planning a siege. She was completely unaware that I'd already seen this exact battle plan in my previous life, because I had been the one to write it. "The Henderson account is worth $12 million," she explained, her voice dripping with the same condescending patronage she had always used with me. She gestured toward a complex flowchart, acting as if I, the new majority shareholder, couldn't possibly grasp such intricate concepts. I listened intently, a faint, secret smile playing on my lips. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like my suppressed laughter. She was detailing her innovative approach to client acquisition, her market analysis, her projected revenue streams that with each slide she was digging her own grave. I nodded thoughtfully at her explanations, my phone resting on my lap under the table, its screen dark but its microphone actively recording every single word. She was, in her arrogance, handing me a notarized confession of plagiarism and client manipulation. As she reached the crescendo of her stolen pitch, her voice ringing with false passion, the conference room door opened. Derek entered, his face still carrying the haunted, hollowed-out expression from Friday night's gala. He looked from me, seated at the head of the table, to Maya, who was mid-sentence, and the air crackled with the unspoken tension of their shared, collapsing world. That afternoon, the sweet taste of victory lingered on my tongue. From the comfort of my new, spacious corner office, I attached the audio file of Maya's presentation to an email. I added a few of my original project files, the ones with timestamps from over a year ago, and sent it all to Richard Morrison's executive assistant. My accompanying note was a model of innocence. "Just wanted to clarify some intellectual property questions regarding the Henderson pitch. I seem to have found some confusing overlaps." The satisfaction tasted sweeter than the imported Belgian chocolates a courier had delivered to my desk. Another thoughtful gift from AM. Each decadent square melted on my tongue like revenge served at the perfect temperature. Through my office window, which overlooked the executive parking garage, I watched Maya pacing frantically beside her Mercedes. Her designer heels clicked a staccato rhythm of panic against the concrete as she furiously texted, no doubt trying to get ahead of a story she didn't even understand yet. The late afternoon light painted golden rectangles across my desk as another private courier arrived, this time with a heavy linen weave envelope. I slid it open with a silver letter opener. It was a formal request from Henderson Industries themselves. Their CEO wanted to meet with me personally to discuss a potential partnership. Just as I finished reading the letter, my office door burst open without a knock. It was Maya, her face flushed and her mascara slightly smudged, her eyes wild with fury. "You backstabbing little bitch," Maya hissed. The door slammed shut behind her, the sound echoing the final snap of her composure. "You think you can just waltz in here and destroy everything I've worked for?" The afternoon sun blazed through my office windows, casting harsh, dramatic shadows across her contorted features. For the first time, 3 years of her suppressed rage that I was no longer the doormat she required, finally erupted. It was magnificent. I leaned back in my new ergonomic chair, the supple leather creaking softly. I steepled my fingers, savoring the delicious, palpable role reversal. She stood before my desk like a defendant awaiting sentencing, her hands gripping the polished wood, as if to keep from lunging at me. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Maya," I replied, my voice a portrait of serene calm. "I'm simply ensuring proper credit is given where it's due. It's a matter of corporate integrity, after all." Her hands started to shake, her knuckles turning white as she gripped the desk's edge. Her breath came in ragged gasps, the facade of the untouchable corporate diva stripped away to reveal the desperate, cornered animal beneath. Her mind was clearly racing, trying to calculate how much I knew, how much I could prove. Just then, the phone on my desk emitted a polite electronic chime. We both looked at it. The caller ID flashed across the small screen, bright and damning. Richard Morrison, CEO. Maya's eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated terror. Checkmate. The call from Richard was beautifully brief. Maya was suspended, pending a full investigation. She was escorted from my office by security, her face a mask of hollow shock, leaving behind only the faint, cloying scent of her perfume. The next evening, my doorman announced a visitor. It was Derek, standing at my apartment door with a massive bouquet of white roses, the exact same flowers I remembered with a cold, piercing clarity that he'd bought for Maya when their affair began behind my back in my previous life. His expensive cologne, a scent I once found intoxicating, now smelled desperate and cheap. He shifted nervously in the grand entryway, his usual swagger completely replaced by the raw uncertainty of a man who has gambled everything on the wrong horse and knows it. "Emma, I made a terrible mistake," he began, his voice laced with that practiced, actorly vulnerability that had once made my heart race. It was a line he'd rehearsed. "I was blind. I was a fool. I didn't see what was right in front of me the whole time." I offered him a gracious smile, taking the bouquet from his hands. Their petals were already beginning to brown at the edges, a perfect metaphor for his chances of redemption. "Thank you, Derek. They're lovely," I said, my voice smooth as silk. I turned to place them in a vase, and over his shoulder, through the large window in my entryway, I spotted a familiar white Mercedes parked across the street. Its headlights were off, but I could just make out the silhouette of its driver sitting perfectly still behind the wheel. Maya was watching. I led him into the living room. Derek's eyes, which had been fixed on my face with pathetic adoration, widened as he took in the space. He stopped dead on the threshold, his mouth slightly agape. He stared at the gleaming marble floors, the massive crystal chandeliers that hung like constellations from the vaulted ceiling, and finally, at the original Monet hanging serenely above the fireplace. Each item was a gift from my patron, a testament to a world of power he had brushed up against but never truly understood. The soft jazz playing from the integrated sound system couldn't mask his sharp, audible intake of breath as he realized the sheer magnitude of the wealth surrounding him, the wealth he had so carelessly thrown away. I never knew you came from money," he stammered, his fingers trailing foolishly along the back of an Italian leather sofa. The same room where, in another lifetime, he'd told me I wasn't sophisticated enough for his social circle. I moved to the custom bar, my gown rustling softly. "I've always been a private person," I said, selecting a bottle of wine that cost more than his monthly rent. I poured 2 glasses, watching him struggle to reconcile this version of me, the poised, untouchable heiress, with the plain, malleable Jane he had so easily discarded. I handed him a glass. Funny how people's true priorities become clear when circumstances change, isn't it? The crystal trembled in his hand as my words hit their mark. "I just need to use the restroom for a moment," he said, his smile strained, as he set his trembling glass down. The second the bathroom door clicked shut, I moved. His phone was on the end table where he'd left it. His password, pathetically, was still my old birthday. A metallic taste of pure vindication filled my mouth as I opened his photo gallery. It was all there. Months, years of evidence. I scrolled through dozens of images, my fingers flying across the screen. Derek and Maya at romantic restaurants, clinking champagne glasses on dates that coincided with his late nights at the office. Derek and Maya at luxury hotels during his supposed business trips. Derek and Maya kissing on a weekend getaway to the coast. I forwarded every single photo and video to myself, each successful transfer a nail being hammered into the coffin of their deception. The city lights twinkled beyond my floor-to-ceiling windows like a million silent stars, all bearing witness to my moment of triumph. In less than 2 minutes, I had compiled a comprehensive, irrefutable dossier of their betrayal. I locked the phone and placed it back on the table just as the toilet flushed. Derek returned, forcing another weak smile, sensing the subtle shift in the atmosphere, but completely unaware that his own device had just provided the ammunition for his complete and utter destruction. As he sat back down, my laptop, open on the coffee table, chimed with an incoming video call from an unknown international number. I answered the call. The screen resolved to show a man with a weathered, handsome face and startlingly familiar blue eyes, standing on the deck of an enormous yacht, the Monaco coastline gleaming behind him. It was Alexander Morrison. My father. "Hello, sweetheart." His warm, familiar voice filled the silent living room. At the sound of his voice and the sight of his face, Derek's wine glass crashed to the marble floor, the dark red liquid spreading like a pool of spilled blood. My father's face, which the world knew from the covers of Forbes and Time, creased into a fond smile as he looked at me. He then glanced pointedly just past the laptop's camera, his eyes settling on Derek. "I trust you're enjoying the little gifts I've been sending to help with your, project," he continued, his tone casual. Derek's face cycled through a rapid, sickening series of emotions: confusion, to dawning recognition, to sheer, abject terror. The name Morrison had been a shock at the gala, but seeing the man himself referring to me as a sweetheart made the full scope of my identity and resources undeniably, terrifyingly clear. He wasn't just the ex-fiancé of a surprise heiress. He was a man who had profoundly wronged the only daughter of one of the most powerful and ruthless billionaires on the planet. Derek began to shrink into the sofa, his body physically caving in on itself. My father's smile faded, replaced by an expression as cold and unforgiving as the deep sea. "Now," he asked, his tone turning arctic, "shall we discuss what happens to people who hurt my daughter?" My father's yacht, the Andromeda, gleamed behind him like a floating palace against the azure backdrop of the Mediterranean. As Derek trembled on my sofa, my father explained everything. He spoke of how he had watched over me from afar, respecting my mother's wish for me to have a normal childhood, but always waiting for the day I would be ready to claim my birthright. The weight of a generational fortune, something I had never conceived of, settled on my shoulders like a velvet cape. He detailed trust funds, vast real estate portfolios, and entire business empires that secretly bore the Chen Morrison name. My life as a struggling accountant hadn't been a reality. It had been a carefully curated and monitored experiment. "I wanted you to understand struggle before you understood power." His voice carried across continents, clear and steady through the fiber optic cables. "True strength isn't given, it's forged. But the lesson is over. I will not stand by and let anyone continue to hurt my daughter." As he spoke, Derek, finally snapping out of his terror-induced paralysis, began to slowly edge toward the door. It was a pathetic, skittering movement, like that of a cornered rodent. My father saw it on his screen. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, son," he said calmly. At that exact moment, the front door to my apartment swung open, and two impeccably dressed men, broad-shouldered and exuding an aura of lethal competence, stepped inside. My father's security team had already arrived. Just as the security guards took up positions flanking the door, Maya burst through the open entryway. She must have been watching from her car, her paranoia finally boiling over when she saw the two men enter the building. Her face was wild, a mask of desperation and unhinged fury. The sight of me, calm and untouchable, with Derek crumpled on the sofa and my billionaire father on a massive screen, sent her over the edge. "You manipulative bitch!" she screamed, her voice cracking with hysteria. She swung her heavy designer handbag in a vicious arc aimed directly at my head. Before it could connect, the two security guards moved with a professional efficiency that was terrifying to behold. One guard caught her wrist, halting the bag's momentum instantly while the other secured her arms behind her back. The scent of her expensive perfume mixed with the metallic tang of pure fear as she struggled uselessly against arms that had likely protected heads of state and Fortune 500 CEOs. She was completely, hopelessly outmatched. My father's voice, amplified by the room's sound system, cut through her hysterical shrieks like a blade of ice. "Miss Rodriguez," he said, his tone utterly flat, "your employment with Morrison Tech Industries and all its subsidiaries has been terminated, effective immediately. Please consider this your official notice." Maya froze, her struggles ceasing. Her eyes widened, her frantic mind snagging on a single, horrifying detail. Alexander Morrison, a man she had never met, knew exactly who she was. "I've been monitoring everyone of consequence in Emma's life for the past 3 years," my father continued, his voice carrying the quiet, absolute authority of a man accustomed to bending governments to his will. The air in the room grew thick, heavy with the gravity of his confession. Private investigators, digital forensics, full spectrum surveillance. I do not leave my daughter's well-being to chance. As he spoke, the large wall-mounted screen that had been displaying his face flickered. It was now a split screen of damning evidence. Crystal clear security footage from restaurants and hotel lobbies showing their affair in high-definition detail. Copies of their texts to each other, filled with cruel jokes at my expense. Financial records detailing every dinner Derek had paid for with my money. It was a comprehensive, multimedia presentation of their betrayal. I watched Derek's face. His knees literally buckled, and he slid from the sofa onto the floor, his body unable to support the weight of his own exposure. The realization was complete. He hadn't just lost a wealthy girlfriend. He had actively and maliciously betrayed the cherished daughter of one of the world's most powerful and vindictive men. He had made a lifelong, formidable enemy. My father let the images play for another moment, the silence in the room broken only by Maya's ragged breathing. "The real question," he said, a cold, thin smile, touching his lips as he reappeared on the screen, "is what we do with all this information now." With a subtle nod from my father that I saw on the screen, the security team released Maya and Derek. For a single, fleeting moment, a flicker of hope might have crossed their minds. But their freedom was an illusion. A third security professional who had entered unnoticed stepped forward holding two sleek metallic bands. With practiced ease, the guards secured the electronic ankle monitors to their legs. They clicked shut with a sound of chilling finality. "Those will ensure you remain available for the various legal proceedings we're about to initiate," my father explained with the casual tone of someone ordering coffee. "Fraud, embezzlement, corporate espionage. We're still compiling the full list." The ocean breeze ruffling my father's hair on the call from Monaco contrasted sharply with the suffocating, static atmosphere in my living room, where the full weight of the Morrison family's power was pressing down on my former tormentors. I stood up slowly, the silk of my dress rustling like autumn leaves. For the first time, not in a memory or a dream, but in reality, I felt the intoxicating sensation of complete and total control. The power was a living thing inside me. I looked down at Maya, whose face was a mess of running mascara and broken pride. I then turned my gaze to Derek, who was still slumped on my priceless marble floor. "There's just one more thing," I said softly. I picked up my tablet from the coffee table, my touch screen coming to life. I pulled up a document and turned the screen so Maya could see it. It was a PDF of her employment contract. I tapped the screen of my tablet, highlighting a specific clause in Maya's contract. "Section 4B, I said, my voice cutting through the silent room. "The morals clause, grounds for immediate termination and forfeiture of all bonuses for conduct that brings disrepute upon the company. I wonder if embezzlement counts." At the word, Maya collapsed. Her knees hit the marble floor with a dull thud, her expensive designer dress pooling around her like spilled ink. The fight drained out of her completely, replaced by a wave of gut-wrenching, desperate sobs. "Emma, please," she wept, her manicured nails scratching uselessly against the cold stone as she reached a trembling hand toward me. "I'm sorry, I was jealous, I was so stupid, but we were friends. Please don't do this." Her desperation echoed off my vaulted ceilings while Derek stood frozen, his face as pale as winter snow, finally understanding the full, catastrophic magnitude of his miscalculation. He had hitched his wagon to a falling star and betrayed the sun. I gazed down at Maya's pathetic, crumpled form, my expression serene, distant. I felt like a Renaissance Madonna in a painting, rendered in oil and pigment, forever untouchable and unmoved by the frantic, temporary suffering of mortals below. Her pleas were nothing more than noise, the last whimpers of a battle that had been lost 3 years ago, the first time she sent that text. "You're right, Maya," I said, my voice soft but final. "We were friends, past tense." A few days later, the battlefield shifted from my home to my birthright, the main boardroom at Morrison Industries. The room was a testament to power, occupying the entire top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a panoramic view of the city that my family's empire had helped build. I presided from the head of the immense mahogany table, in a chair that had waited 30 years for me to claim it. Across from me, flanked by a single sweating lawyer, sat Maya and Derek. They looked small and insignificant, like defendants at a show trial they had no hope of winning. The morning light streamed through the glass, casting long, accusing shadows across the stacks of legal documents that would determine their futures. Their lawyer, a man named Henderson, who looked profoundly out of his depth, cleared his throat. "Miss Morrison Chen," he ventured, sweat beading on his forehead despite the perfectly climate-controlled environment. "My clients are deeply remorseful. We understand there have been significant professional and personal breaches. We're prepared to offer a very generous settlement to make this right and avoid any further unpleasantness." He slid a folder across the table. I didn't even glance at it. Instead, I smiled, a slow, predatory smile that didn't reach my eyes, and opened the thick, heavy folder that sat in front of me, the one containing their complete digital and financial histories. I gave a subtle nod to my assistant. The wall-mounted screens that lined the boardroom, previously displaying abstract art, flickered to life. There was no need for my commentary. The evidence spoke for itself. Maya's face appeared next to neat, damning spreadsheets detailing her embezzlement from company expense accounts, a few $1,000s at a time over 2 years. Adjacent monitors lit up with Derek's encrypted messages, now decrypted, showing clear evidence of insider trading with confidential client information he'd gleaned from company files. The projector hummed softly as it displayed timelines, photo evidence of their affair cross-referenced with fraudulent travel expenses, and sworn affidavits from private investigators. Each pixel on the high-resolution screens was a testament to their greed, their arrogance, and their astounding stupidity. My father's voice, patched in from Monaco, filled the room from concealed speakers as cold and clear as a final judgment. "This evidence, in its entirety, will be presented to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Office of the Manhattan District Attorney within the hour, unless a full confession is signed." Maya's lawyer stared at the screens, his face growing paler with each new slide. He saw the airtight cases, the mountain of proof, the utter lack of any defensible position. He quietly, deliberately, gathered his papers, closed his briefcase with a soft click, and stood up. Without another word to Maya or Derek, he turned and walked out of the boardroom, abandoning his clients to the fate they had created for themselves. The sound of the boardroom door closing behind their lawyer was like a death knell. "Emma, we can make this right," Derek pleaded, his voice cracking, devolving into that of an adolescent boy. All his practiced charm was gone, leaving only raw, pathetic fear. "Tell us what you want. Money? A public apology? We'll do anything." The desperation rolling off them was a palpable force, and to me it tasted like vintage champagne on my tongue. Maya nodded frantically beside him, mascara streaking down her cheeks in black, teary rivers, her earlier arrogance replaced by the pathetic, frantic scrambling of a cornered animal. I considered their offer with a theatrical slowness, tapping a finger on my chin as if truly weighing their proposal. I let them hang in that sliver of desperate hope for a long, torturous moment. Finally, I stood up. My Hermes heels clicked softly against the marble floor as I walked to the vast window, my back to them as I looked out over the city that was now mine. They waited, their breathing shallow for my verdict. I delivered it with crystalline clarity, a single word that sealed their fate and ended our story forever. No. As the word hung in the air, the boardroom doors opened once more. This time, it wasn't a lawyer. It was 2 uniformed police officers and my head of security, ready to escort them from my tower of power to their waiting transport to central booking. 6 months later, the Mediterranean sun painted golden ripples across the azure water as I stood on the deck of the Andromeda. A gentle salt spray kissed my face, while a pod of dolphins played in our wake, their sleek bodies arching gracefully from the sea. My hair, now a striking platinum blonde, styled by the world's best colorist, caught the sea breeze as I initialed the acquisition reports for 3 smaller tech firms I'd purchased that morning. The scent of jasmine from the coastal hills of Italy mixed with expensive sunscreen, and the deep, quiet satisfaction of justice served cold. It had been a busy half year. Morrison Tech Industries had been officially rebranded to Morrison Chen Industries, a name that now dominated financial news. My father was easing into semi-retirement, and I was no longer just the surprise heiress who had stunned a ballroom gala. I was the CEO. I was a force to be reckoned with, standing under a sun that felt like it was shining just for me. The past was a closed book, and the future was an empire I was building page by page. Flashbulbs exploded like tiny silent supernovas, a chaotic galaxy of light just for me. I stepped onto the red carpet at the annual Tech Innovation Awards, my custom Ely Saab gown flowing behind me like a liquid starlight. Emma Morrison Chen, CEO of the Year, reporters shouted, their voices a chaotic chorus competing with the frantic clicking of 1,000 cameras. I smiled, a calm, genuine smile that I had practiced until it was real, waving to the excited crowd. The world saw me as a phoenix, a powerhouse who had appeared from nowhere to revolutionize the industry. My story, carefully curated by my father's PR team, was one of quiet genius finally stepping into the light. As I moved toward the golden doors of the venue, my gaze drifted past the velvet ropes. And then, I saw her. Standing behind a mobile coffee cart wearing a stained apron and a flimsy paper hat was Maya. Her eyes, wide with a mixture of awe, envy, and stark recognition, met mine for a single, fleeting second across the chasm that now separated our worlds. I gave no sign I had seen her. I simply continued to smile and wave to my adoring public, a queen gliding past a ghost, as I entered the hall where my future awaited. From my Manhattan penthouse, the city sparkled below like a living circuit board, each pinprick of light a dream, an ambition, a life. It was my kingdom, viewed from my tower. I curled into my Italian leather chair with a cup of rare white tea, idly flipping through industry magazines that all seemed to feature my face on their covers. "The Phoenix Rising," read one headline. "From betrayal to billions, the Emma Morrison Chen story," declared another. The evening news played softly on the wall-mounted screen, the newscaster reporting with detached professionalism on Maya Rodriguez's recent conviction for embezzlement and Derek Vance's ongoing and very public legal troubles with the SEC. My phone buzzed with a stream of congratulatory messages on the Innovation Award, from world leaders, celebrities, and business moguls who now competed for my time and attention. I felt no giddy thrill, only a deep and peaceful satisfaction. I watched the last rays of the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and violet, the colors of victory, a queen in her tower, having transformed betrayal into an empire and pain into a power that was exactly as destiny had always intended.